Oh, okay. I was a 31-year-old nuclear engineer with a wife and 2 kids. I went to seminary, started learning the Bible, and blew my mind, and I was very disappointed that my adult education in Sunday school didn't enrich me. It basically just rehashed what I learned when I was 12 about the Bible study. So ever since then, I have really wanted to encourage some serious adult learning. Okay, now when I was at Muskingum University, our religion majors had to give a presentation as a result of their senior project and to the department. And one year, a young man was giving his presentation, and he was very unsettled and frightful and was all upset because the literature he had been studying had talked about the myths of the faith. And so we all said, yeah. And so afterwards, when we were discussing what his grade was going to be, we felt, why did a religion major not know that a myth is a story that conveys a truth? So, and I often figures divine beings, but the reason for telling the story is to convey the truth underneath it. Okay, for instance, we all learn Greek and Roman mythology. So we learn Greek myths, but the underlying principle, the truths of the Greek myths are very different from Christian myths mostly. So, but we know Persephone, who was taken down to Hades, to the underworld. Her mother Demeter is the goddess of the harvest, and so she's so distraught that she's lost her daughter. She keeps all the plants, causes all the plants to die. So after a while, the earth is dead, and Zeus is worried, so he goes down and convinces Hades to let her go. Well, that'd be okay, except that she had eaten 4 pomegranate seeds while she was in the underworld. She had to remain there for 4 months. So after the 4 months were up, she comes back up. Demeter is so happy that she causes all the plants to grow again. So what's the deep truth we learn from this? That there are 4 months where there's no growth, and then there's spring through fall where there is growth. And so when all the plants die, don't panic, because Persephone is just doing her time for 4 months in the underworld and then coming back up. Okay, so but we understand that as adults. What we don't learn is that there are a couple of different versions of the story. We just learn one in school, and since we're children, we don't learn that Hades abducted her and raped her, and that's why she's down in the underworld. Okay, but that's adult. That's adult. Okay, before we get started, the next thing we got to talk about is the truth of the Bible. The Bible is true. The church has always believed that. I believe that the Bible is true. And once the scientific revolution comes, then the notion becomes, if you're going to get the truth, you have to have facts. So if it's factual, it's true. And then some of the Protestant Christianity buys into that and then says, if the Bible is true and facts make true, then the Bible then has to be factual. That's a very different thing from saying the Bible is true. Well, the Bible is true, we say it's infallible. That means it cannot fail in matters of faith. That is the standard Presbyterian understanding of the Bible. But Presbyterians are a wide great tent, so we still have some folks in the Presbyterian family who think the Bible is inerrant, that is without error. So then they have to do some little, if the sun stands still, or if the radius of a circle is only 3, or when we get to the creation of the world, that it somehow balances our scientific understanding. That's different. Okay, last thing, we're going to eventually get to Genesis, I promise. In Bible study, the three most important words in Bible study are context, context, context. That is, if you want to really understand what a passage is, then you need to think about what comes before it and what comes after it. Which, perfect. But it presents us with a problem if we're talking about the first chapter of Genesis, the first book of the Bible. What comes before it? Well, luckily we found out after 1850. Because in 1850, there was a discovery of the library of King Ashurbanipal in what's now in Mosul. And it had 30,000 cuneiform tablets in this library. Huge library. Cuneiform, you don't remember, is the little wedge-shaped, the first alphabet of humans. Well, there are a couple of tablets, 7 tablets or 3 tablets, that had this story in it called Enuma Elish, and the way the ancient world always titled something was the first words of the book, which is why I call it Genesis. Right? It's in the beginning, and Latin is Genesis. So this one is called Enuma Elish, and it was discovered in 1850, not translated until 1899 or 1902. Didn't really become widespread known until the early 60s. But when it first came out in the early 1900s, it caused a big flap because it was the Babylonian story of creation, which was also, as more and more archaeology discovered, was also the same story for the Assyrians and the Sumerians, and had been around for thousands of years. But because of the way the cuneiform was written, we know those tablets were written about 1,100 years before Christ, which was 550 years before Genesis was written. And then the story is Marduk is the protector of Babylon. The gods have a battle. They make Babylon Marduk the primary. He goes against the great sea dragon Tiamat, kills her, fillets her. Her skin makes the sky, organizes the year, sends the moon and sun gods to take their positions in the sky, creates humans from the blood of one of the aides, and has the gods build Babylon temples. But because he's the patron god of Babylon. So here's another notion of Marduk slew Tiamat. Bless you. So now, folks, when they compare that to Genesis 1, it seems like Genesis 1 is based on this Babylonian creation story. That can't happen. But what it looks like is that, remember the Hebrews, remember that they didn't go into exile. They're exiled to Babylon. And so these are the Hicks from the south who come north to the great big city, and gee, Mabel, this isn't Kansas anymore. And so here's what the Babylonians say the world is like. But we, Jews, know that that's not right. So the writer then, or writers of this first chapter of Genesis, who is very much aware of this Babylonian story, transforms it for Christian understanding. Okay, so for instance, at the very beginning, there are all sorts of these gods and stuff who are battling, but for Jews, there's only one God, and there's nothing except God, and then God creates everything. And then there's chaos in the darkness, whether it's Tiamat or the deep, as in Genesis 1, which is Tehom, which folks find is that's kind of interesting. The protector god acts, uses wind and formation. Then there's this unfolding of creation, and at the very end, the gods party, and God rests and sanctifies the seventh day. We'll come back to the seventh day. So this then is in a transformation of the Babylonian creation story to become the Jewish creation story through the Holy Spirit working through the vocabulary and understanding of the writer to inspire this work. And it's organized because it's a poem or a song, so that folks will learn. It's orderly in the beginning, and then there's a creation each day as an introduction, a command, an execution, assessment. You all can read, so I don't need to do that. A concluding summary, and there was evening and morning, the seventh day, the third day. And then at the end, creation is finished, and on the seventh day, God rests. We're getting to the bottom here. I mean, the passages, we're getting there. Okay, now this poem is structured. We're not trying to talk about science here. We're talking about a poem that has structure. And so that the first 3 days are preparation for the population of the second 3 days. So for instance, the second day, waters in the sky are created, and then the fifth day, the water and the sky are populated with fish and with birds. And dry land and plants then give a place for humans and animals. Okay? And then the seventh day. Finally, here we are. Okay, so this is the beginning of when God began to create. This is you can translate this a number of ways, or in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was complete chaos, and darkness covered the face of the deep. Now, okay, look at between verse 1 and verse 2. When God began to create, or in the beginning God created the heavens and earth. Okay? The earth was complete chaos, and darkness covered the face of the deep. In the 1800s, once we started learning that the age of the earth was not just 3,700 years ago, much, much older than that. Then folks were still trying to make the Bibles factual, so we've got to see how does this relate? How do you get 6 days of creation in 100,000 years back then, 100,000 now, millions? Well, because the difference between verse 1 and verse 2. Verse 1, when in the beginning God created heavens and the earth. Bam, there it was, 7 million years ago. And then God decides to, scrub the, whatever you paint on, what are you going to call it? Canvas, and starts again. And so then, 4,000 years ago, the 6 days of creation occur when God does all this. So it all fits. It's okay. All right. A wind from God. Remember, Tiamat's wind blows up Tiamat so he can throw his spear in there and kill her. Or the same word for spirit is the same word for wind. Hovers. This is swept. This is the word that you'll use for hovering over the waters. Okay, this is Michelangelo, Sistine Chapel. Prior to Michelangelo, whenever we have something about God creating, God is always very magisterial in creating, and just But Michelangelo makes it. Well, it's the Renaissance, so we're emphasizing humanists. But he wants to emphasize that God is really involved in this, and so here is God seriously. Then God said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw that the light was good. God separated the light from the darkness, called the light day, the darkness night. There was evening and there was morning, the first day. Okay? Now, he separates the light from where? Okay? There's no sun, there's no stars. Where's the light come from? Well, here's a Russian artist who's trying to waters of chaos here, and God's creating the light. It's hard to see that that's God right there. But you see the light is just manifested. It is So the light is created to make day and night. So that's time. So what God is doing is creating time. Then God says, let there be a dome in the midst of the word. The dome, that word is translated sometimes old-timey firmament. It comes from hammering a bowl. So there's a bowl or a dome that separates. And when God creates, God is separating. So God separates the waters of chaos and pulls it up. The waters above and below, and the empty space in there is now called sky. Okay, because God calls it sky. And then there's evening and morning, the second day. This doesn't quite fit for this because this is already has the earth created. But this is just to show you what the ancient Hebrews thought about the universe. Was the underworld, the earth, then the firmament or the bowl, the sky, the stars, which don't move or hang in from the top there, and the sun and the moon, and then there's water all around because that's the water of chaos. So if you come back in a couple of weeks when we do Noah, you'll see that the gates of the floodgates of the sky open up. And what happens when you open up those gates? Well, it rains. And what happens down here if you dig down the earth, what do you get? Water. Why? Because it's water all around you. Okay. Then God said, let the waters under the sky be gathered together in one place and let dry land appear. So the waters are receding and there's the earth. God calls the dry land earth. The water gathered together called seeds. God saw that's good. It's always good. Then God said, let the earth put forth vegetation. So the earth brought forth vegetation. So here's creation, but it's not. This is God not doing everything. God's saying to the earth, okay, now you do your thing. So now folks who are evolutionists, Christians, who are also the Bible to be factual, then can say, oh, look, this is evolution. This is God's creative love then is causing continual creation. Then God said, let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night. Let it be for signs and for seasons, for days and years. Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to live light upon the earth. So now we've got time, but now we're making lights. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. Okay, what in the heck is the greater light to rule the day? The sun. Well, why didn't the priestly writer just say sun? Well, because this is pulling for Jews who are saying we're not like these Babylonians who have a sun god and a moon god. So if we were to say God made the sun and the moon, then you might think that those are gods. But we want to be very clear that there's only one God who creates everything, including the sun and the moon. Okay. God saw this good, and there's the fourth day. So here's Michelangelo again, God creating the sun and the moon. The moon's over here. This is God creating the planets over here. Okay, well, as you might gather, this caused quite a stir. Why? Because Michelangelo shows the soles of the feet of God, which you just don't do. That's very butt cheeks, okay, that's all right, but not the soles of the feet. Okay. Then God said, let the waters bring forth streams, let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, let the birds fly upon the earth and dome of the sky. So God creates the great sea monsters. Well, God creates the sea monsters. The great sea monsters don't exist independently of God. They're like the Babylonians think. No, And every living creature that moves of every kind, with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. God saw this good, blessed them, be fruitful and multiply, yada yada. Evening and morning. Well, why does it say evening first? Because that's the Hebrew day. Starts at sundown. So it's evening and morning, that's the day. Okay, here we have a Byzantine mosaic of God blessing the birds and the fishes, and there's a scroll to show he has power. He's sitting on top of the cosmos. He looks an awful lot like Jesus, because he is, because the church, remember, decides that Jesus is God. So it's a good way to show God is like Jesus, except his halo doesn't have three little spokes here, which we would have if it was Jesus. So, and also this is Byzantine. When he creates Adam looks just like God. Sort of in the image, maybe. Okay, so why are birds and fishes created at the same time? And let me tell you, this has caused us some heartache for some folks that want to make it reach with science, because what's our current understanding? Fish become animals, animals become birds. So, but animals haven't been created yet, but birds already appeared. Oh. Okay, so why are fish and birds together? Because Hebrew taxonomy, that is how they understand, how they classify animals, these are swarmy things. Fish swarm in schools, birds swarm in flocks. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's why they're together, because they're in the same category for Hebrews. Okay. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things and wild animals of the earth of every kind." So here's our taxonomy again. We've got cattle, we've got domesticated animals, we've got wild animals, and then we've got creeping animals. So creeping animals, so yes, we have creeping animals. So they're the bugs and the spiders and the locusts and the scorpions and, creeping things. Okay. Then God said, it was God made the animals of every kind. Okay, that's always good. Then God said, let us make humans. Now the word for Greek word, Hebrew word for human is Adam. So that could be, you could translate that Adam, or you could translate that human. And in this context, it makes more sense to say humans, but the new RSV updated edition wants us to make sure that we know that the Hebrew word there is really Adam. In our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, over the cattle, the wild animals of the earth. In our image, to be created in the image in the ancient Mesopotamian world, the king, the emperor, is the image of God. So to make God say in our image, it's not. God is not making a king, God is making us all royalty. To be humans is to be special in some way. To have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and the cattle and the wild animals of the earth. Dominion, okay, so for a long time, and still currently, some folks, dominion, you have dominion, you can do anything you dang well please, right? And anything you can please, there's you have dominion. So if you want to eradicate any species of birds, of fish or animals, you can do that because we're supposed to have dominion. I'd say in the last 50 years, people have tried to have sort of rethought dominion to be your reigning. The queen has dominion over her subjects, which means she can tell them what to do, but she also has some responsibility for her subjects. And so if they're hungry, then the queen has some obligation to feed them because their allegiance is to her for defense or whatever. Okay, so dominion over and over the things. So God created humans in His image. In the image of God, He created them. The Hebrew is Him, but English doesn't English doesn't have that word. That doesn't exist in Hebrew. We just have the accusative case. Hebrews put a word in there instead. So something's got to, because we could say, in the image of God, they were, he created both. But no, they say them, him, or she. So in this context, it would be them. Male and female, he created them. Okay? Not men first, then women, but together at the same time. And this is the word male and female, ish and isha, instead of Adam. Okay, so this is the most famous painting of the creation. No, not really. I just put that in there just so we don't think that God is just a white male. And Adam is the prototypical human, is also Caucasian. Okay, but no, okay. So here's the one we're all familiar with, Michelangelo's. Okay, God creating Adam. Around God are some angels, Eve, but Michelangelo also paints Eve to look like Mary, who the Sistine Chapel is dedicated to. And this is probably wisdom. Wisdom was the female spirit that was with God in creation, mostly in Psalms and wisdom, Proverbs, wisdom Proverbs. And perhaps folks want to say maybe there were some angels in here that were in dark because they're going to fall. Perhaps would be the fallen angels. But the most fascinating thing for me is God's cape. Okay, so the cape here, does this remind you of anything? A human brain. A human brain and the brain stem. Michelangelo was really interested in anatomy. And so he is making some comments on human, what does it mean to be human? And how are we different from the rest of creation? It has to do with this, perhaps with his big brain. Okay, and then God's powerful finger, Adam's limp finger, because he hadn't been created yet. But it parallels. See, the way his finger is the same way Adam's finger is, with the two. So it's in the image. Okay. Then God blessed them, male and female, and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, and have dominion over the fish and birds," and yada, yada, yada. God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that's upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed is fruit, you shall have them for food." Okay, we're all vegetarians. "And to every beast of the earth, and every bird of the air, and everything that creeps on the earth, everything that's made that has a breath of life, I've given every green plant for food." No carnivores. All the way God created us to be vegetarian. Luckily we get permission to eat meat later on, but not this hour. Okay, God saw that everything he had made, and indeed it was very good. Not just good like all the other days, but this is the pinnacle of creation. This is the humans that are the highest, and so it's very good. The sixth day. Okay, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the sixth day, God finished the work. And New RSV wants to make sure you know that early scribes were a little concerned about, on the sixth day, God finished the work. Well, shouldn't it be the seventh day? Did he finish on the sixth and then rest on the seventh? Or did he finish on the seventh? Did he finish right at the minute the seventh day started? So you can see why they have sixth and seventh. They're trying to correct what the priestly writer done. Finished the work that he had done, and God rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done, because he was so exhausted. No, God's not exhausted. No, rest is not something one does because one's tired. Rest is one done because it's completed, because there's nothing, so it can be restful. There are no tasks. God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it. because God rested from the whole work. Now, what's the seventh day? What's the seventh day when the Babylonians don't do anything different on the seventh day? They do it on the 15th. No, they don't do it on the seventh day. It's just the Jews, the Sabbath. So here, this priestly writer, priestly because he's very interested in worship, in proper worship, and all, wants to make sure that these Jews understand that the Sabbath is holy and it has been from the very creation. Because God hallowed it and rested. Okay, so here we have Jesus resting. Okay. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. These are the generations. That's a phrase that appears in the book of Genesis a number of times, which organizes the storyline. These are generations of Abraham. These are the generations of Jacob. That kind of separate things. So we know the story then is ended. Okay, why do we keep remembering, retelling the story? Because it tells us deep truths. That's the purpose of the story about who God is and who we are. Some of the things it says, there's only one God who created with purpose and with order. This isn't the many gods fighting, and just as an afterthought, we make humans. No, this is God with purpose and with order. Now, and this is important because if you don't have order, if there's not one God who's orderly, then perhaps if we were to do a scientific experiment in Greensboro, the God of Greensboro would determine what the outcome would be. And if we did the same experiment in Raleigh, then it would be the God of Raleigh who would have control over that experiment. But so science occurs in the Judeo-Christian West because there's one God who's orderly, who makes order. So if it works in Greensboro, it's going to work in Raleigh. Right? Now, there are no other cultures that are going to think that. Okay, God creates creation in a way that continues God's creative work. God creates, God sustains, but it's not complete. It's ongoing. It's ongoing creation. So we have some responsibility for ongoing creation, as does the earth and the seas. All creation is good. There's no evil stuff. So if you have myths like the Greeks or the Romans or the Babylonians, then you have good and evil stuff that exists all the time from the very beginning. But not with Jews and Christians. No, everything is good. So everything that God makes is good. So. But we don't like that. So for instance, we often think of somehow women as being innately evil. St. Augustine, because St. Augustine, when he's trying to pray and use his mind to bless God, he sees a young woman walk by, a fleshy young woman, and he then no longer is thinking about praying for some reason. He's thinking about that fleshy young woman. So therefore, spiritual flesh, spirit, men, good, flesh, women, evil. Okay, but that's not what this says. And while we're humans, we have a special place in creation. We're part of it. So we are given in the image of God to rule, but we have some responsibilities in it. We're not an afterthought, but central to God's full creation. We are the ultimate thing. And we use what we've been given to glorify God to transform culture. This is a very reformed Presbyterian understanding of what Christians are supposed to do. Transform culture. Take what the culture says and says, no, this is not right. This is what's right. So it would be like if you go to Rejoice, and for instance, they were to sing Bridge Over Troubled Water, or Wind Beneath My Wings. In the context of Christian worship, you have transformed that into something that's faithful. Okay, questions, comments, jokes?
Jerry, I read Adam being from the mud or from the dirt.
Yeah, that's next week.
Okay.
Next week we get to make Adam from the Adamah, the clay. Yeah.
I thought that Eve was made out of the sternum or something of Adam.
Rib.
And then,
Come back next week for that. That is chapter 2.
okay.
That is, we will talk about, okay, we'll talk about a couple of different creation stories in the Bible. Not just this one, Genesis 1, but a couple of other ones, including the one where God makes Adam out of the clay, of the mud, and Eve out of the rib. Yes?
I'm a little confused about when this story actually was written. If it was written in Babylon during when the Jews were there, that would have been around 1000.
About 500, somewhere between 580 and 530-ish.
Oh, so early, when
BC, that would be when, that would be around that time. So it was written around that time.
So why does Revelation go back and reference the Babylonian story when they start talking about Tiamat and Marduk, alluding to all that? Why do they do that?
Next week, this is you don't get to get continuity, continuity. You get to have
Jerry, wasn't there a belief that the stars, there's actually like a curtain there, and God blew behind the curtain, and the stars were actually the light from heaven shining through these little cuts, little holes in the curtain? Have you heard anything like that before?
yes, and there's some art that looks like that. God peeks behind the curtain to look down on humanity. But yes, the stars are fixed,
Yeah.
so they're just hung in the sky. Okay.
Holiday.
Okay. Okay, so next week we do Genesis 2, which is a different creation story, although folks now who want to combine them, but we'll see that it's very different. And we'll see there are also some other creation accounts in the Bible, but not just those two images. So I hope you'll join me next week for that.